Okay, so I think that this is working. Welcome to this brave new world of online education and video lectures, unless, of course, you've already taken one of these classes and had a video lecture, in which case this isn't so new. So basically the idea here is just to talk about some of the points on the PowerPoint slides that you may need a little bit more explanation on. So we're starting here with introducing government in America, the first set of slides. The first point here is about on slide 3 regarding liberal democracy. Now in this case, liberal, we don't mean liberal as you might hear it on Fox News. Here it means something much broader. It's a liberal democracy, so you have democracy, rule of the people, and yet you also have liberalism, which just means respect for personal liberties. So there's democracy, the rule of the people's will rules, but there are certain limitations. There are protections for individual and minority rights, for personal liberties. There's the right to practice your own religion, for instance. And the government, even if the majority of the people want to outlaw a certain religion, they can't do that. That's prevented by the First Amendment. We'll talk more about this when we get to civil liberties, but the idea here is it's democracy, it's the rule of the people, but what the people can actually do, what the government can actually do on behalf of the people, is limited somewhat by the Constitution. So constitutional government, respect for personal liberties. Then the other point that maybe needs to be explained a little bit more, the 3 theories of democracy. That starts on slide 7. And first of all, there's the difference between descriptive and normative or prescriptive theories. Okay, a descriptive theory is just attempting to describe the world the way that it is. It's just attempting to look at what's out there, say this is what's there, and then just describe it. So the theory of gravity is descriptive. It's not trying to say that there should or should not be gravity, or that gravity should be different than it is. It's just saying there is gravity, gravity exists, this is how we know it exists, this is how it operates. It's a theory of the way that things are. So it's just an attempt to describe the way that things are. Normative or prescriptive theories are theories about how things should be. So theories of democracy are often normative. There's an argument about this is what democracy should be like. Okay, this is how things should be. They should be different. They should be better. These are theories that try to say, again, how things should be. So descriptive says how things are. Normative or prescriptive says how things should be. Okay, the 3 theories of democracy we have here, if you just look at them very quickly, you can see, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that they're descriptive or prescriptive or normative? If you look, I mean, really, they're descriptive. Only one of them would really be very good. Only one of them would be the type of theory that you would actually want to say this is the way things should be. Okay, so 3 basic theories of democracy. First of all, there's the theory of pluralism. Okay, and this has to do especially theories of democracy, and in particular, theories of the role of interest groups in democracy, theories of the roles of interest groups in shaping policy. Okay, pluralism says you have a bunch of different small interest groups, they work together, they work against each other, but from that you create policy, and it's basically a democratic process. So you have, debates about whether or not a new airport should be built. You have the airlines want to build a new airport. People who live in the neighborhood where the airport will be built do not want the airport because it will be loud. Other people have other views. They all come together. They disagree with each other, but ultimately they work together and they create policy. Okay, and again, the idea is it's basically democratic. So that's pluralism. The idea, interest groups, different groups of people, they come out, they work together, and they make policy, and it's basically a good democratic process. Okay, then you have hyperpluralism, which agrees with that and says, yes, you have all of these interest groups, but that's a bad thing. That's a problem. All of these different interest groups are so strong. There are so many. They have such different views. They're all so strong that they pull policy in too many different directions, and it's impossible to get an actual coherent or sensible or meaningful policy. Instead, you just get a basically incoherent policy that's meant to satisfy all sorts of different groups, okay? So again, they say interest groups are there, they're very powerful, but that's a bad thing. Basically, policymaking is too democratic. There are too many different groups, too many different people that policy tries to satisfy. So hyperpluralism is sort of pluralism, but it's a negative view of what's actually going on. Then there's elite and class theory. This theory holds that actually most interest groups, most groups of people make no difference at all. They really are very unimportant. Policy is really shaped, driven by the elites, in particular by the wealthy. So as the slide explains, it's the elites, it's the very wealthy who have the money to finance campaigns, and therefore to influence candidates to get them so that they have influence over them through buying advertising, but they also can control the media by buying advertising. So the example I usually use in class, imagine that you're the editor of a local newspaper. You find out that United Airlines has been basically not doing the mandatory security checks that they're supposed to do on their airplanes, but your newspaper is situated near an airport and United does 20 or 25% of your advertising. Would you run the story? Would you run the story about how United is basically breaking the law, endangering passengers, knowing that a very large chunk, 20-25% of your advertising comes from United Airlines? I mean, sometimes people just say, no, I wouldn't. So maybe you would try to soften it. But, there's an example of how powerful companies can really influence reporting and therefore influence how policy is actually made by influencing people's perceptions of things in very subtle ways. Because, again, they have the money to basically buy advertising, to influence the media as well as to influence candidates. And so they can influence public perception. And again, the view is look at environmental issues. Yes, every once in a great while, a salamander somewhere in Oregon might be made an endangered species, but for the most part, the oil companies get what they want. Look at what happened in the Gulf of Mexico. Relatively little regulation of the oil industry over the years because the oil industry has all this money. The big oil companies are the ones who have the money, not the small ragtag environmental groups who really are pretty powerless. So this is elite and class theory, which says interest groups don't matter. All that matters is who has the money, and who has the money therefore basically has the power. And as the final point on that slide number 6 says, over 1/3 of the nation's wealth is currently held by only about 1% of the population. So these are three theories of democracy. Again, they're all descriptive. They're all attempts just to describe the way that democracy actually works in the United States. Again, only one of them, pluralism, is actually very positive. It would be odd if elite and class theory were normative or prescriptive and we're saying this is the way that it should be. The wealthy should just control everything and govern for their own good and no one else's. That's obviously not normative. That's a descriptive theory, an attempt, again, to describe the way that things really are rather than the way that they should be. So hopefully that helped to clear up or help to explain in more detail that section of the PowerPoint slides. And this material isn't actually in the textbook. So.